Good afternoon, everyone. I think I'll allow next few minutes for everybody to join here. I think, as we said or we shared earlier, we are right now on a regular basis sharing our insights on key elements which are happening in the market. We have done some sessions on product management last few weeks. Many of you would have got a chance to participate there, so you can pick up the insights there, because I believe that product management is a critical element for any kind of transformation in the country, and of course any kind of competency you want to build. Product management is the first one you need to build, so we did that. But of course, in the journey, what we've also seen is that regulators coming back with the continuous neo updates on various policies and processes. And earlier, obviously, in my days in the bank, Gopal Krishnan committee report was like Gita, right? Everybody was reading, using all of that. And of course, they were getting audited by RBI based on that as well. And of course, that document also has been changed. So we'll talk about that maybe in the next few webinars as well. I think that's the plan, because that document has also been upgraded, and many of you must be already up to deploying it, and maybe at times finding it difficult to deploy. So we'll talk about that. Now, recently RBI came back with the outsourcing related stuff, which is IT outsourcing was never specifically called out. It was part of only Gopal Krishna committee report. And they've come back with this documentation clearly, what is IT outsourcing, what is not IT outsourcing. So they were also called out specifics. A lot of confusion was there. So when they came back with a draft, I think a few months back, feedback went back. And based on that, they have come back with specificity on what exactly is IT services, and therefore, what do you need to do to control any kind of challenges on that. There are also a lot of issues with it as well, right? I mean, we'll talk about it as we go forward. Maybe I'm jumping right now. Let's just quickly introduce ourselves. My name is Sameer Singh Jaini, and along with me, Shashank will be taking this session as well. He's a deep expert on this segment. We'll introduce him in a while, but both of us will be taking this session as we go forward. We are India's largest, maybe Asia's largest digital finance and fintech focused consulting firm, based from Mumbai and Bangalore largely, and you can find in both the places almost all the time. So if you want to meet us on any of these areas, we will basically love to meet you and learn from you as well, your approaches on these. What work we do largely work on consulting. So this is the bread and butter for us. We work with a lot of clients right there, from early stage startups to large banks to a payment network to a bureau, all of them in different journeys. So therefore, some of the knowledge which we bring to the table is practical by nature. And of course, we have understood how the regulator works as well because of the backgrounds we have had. We do a lot of go-to-market for fintechs, and of course, a lot of banks use us for their go-to-market, saying that with which startup we need to partners and all. And of course, embedded finance is the area where we do consulting and partnership. So a lot of embedded finance players use our services. We do recruitment and training as well. Training is again used by large players. These are some of our clients across banking and fintech and all the areas. We sort of work with them in different areas. In terms of reach, fairly large. So if you want to work with us and sort of collaborate with us, we'll find multiple areas for collaboration. And if not, we can always meet in Bharat Fintech Summit, which comes in every February. Some of you would have attended. So that's about it. So I'll not go deep into our consulting service, but just a quick high-level thought process. We do a lot of benchmarking in the market on the digital maturity model. So a lot of people are saying that, okay, how was my journey, process and all. So we can actually do benchmarking services. We actually have built a digital strategy for a lot of entities in the market, from bank to embedded finance players to payment companies, a lot of them. The journeys is something which is core to us, and we have made it larger and larger over last few years. Program management critical, because a lot of times these complex programs do not get executed on time, or may have issues or risks. We solve for that, and of course, at this point of time, for example, we are helping a lot of companies to evaluate platforms, figure out what we should do to be done. And of course, open banking side, right now we are doing strategy for few entities. API management, how the strategy, how the platform will work. And of course, we work with fintechs on the security side as well, and regulatory compliance as well as research side as well. So I'll move on from here. Quick introduction. I have been in the banking segment all the while. And I think from a learning perspective, this is the area where I almost spent in the banking domain almost, I don't know, 16, 17 years. And for last 6 years, we've been running this firm. As a CTO, I've done this work. As as a platform player, I have done this work. And of course, at an early stage when I was running that digital platform, so a lot of outsourcing was happening then also of IT. So we've done that. And of course, Shashank himself has been a very big expert in this area. Maybe I'll try to see if I can put myself on mute. No, I can. Okay, maybe you introduce me later, otherwise we'll have to be in the same room. So yeah, so Shashank, obviously, we work together. So he was an expert always in IT governance, working closely with RBI, right? So each audit, I was saved because I didn't have to go to in front of the regulator because Shashank was there. He would go run all the risk management processes, contracts, agreements, and all that. And of course, from infra perspective, IT perspective, process perspective, security perspective, his handle is very strong. So I think he is the one who will take you through. I would always tell that we are solved the very problem. So he would actually take it forward. So we'll talk about that later. But a quick one on just an overview of the master direction. So I think the RBI has been trying to reduce the risk of outsourcing, and of course we have seen that a lot of times the tech or outsourcing happens without everybody acknowledging and understanding why we are doing what we are doing. It happens because somebody says, yeah, ye le lete hain, without evaluating that, how will we have an exit strategy? How will we support it? How will we audit it? How will we track it? So that's the guidelines they have brought in. I was always confused. So which document to use? So sometimes we use outsourcing guidelines. There's a separate outsourcing guidelines, which is not with IT. So it was generally outsourcing guidelines. Then there was a Gopal Krishnan committee. So sometimes there were overlaps that they have clarified. And of course, they have called out all the different 10 domains where they have called out all the directions out there. So we'll cover all those directions in terms of policy, risk frameworks, agreements, monitoring controls. All of these areas across these 10 domains have been clearly called out. And of course, this is the first time where RBI has clearly come back with an approach and strategy around cloud. If you have to adopt cloud, what you need to do, how do you control, manage all of that. Now, all of that is running based on a statement of policy which came in February 10th, 2022. My suggestion is you may have a look at that as well to understand from what is the reference point and what all other policy changes which are likely to happen over a period of time. We look at once that came, more and more documentations are coming from regulators at a regular pace. Now, why now? I think the critical part is why now. It could have happened earlier also. I mean, I always thought when I was in a bank that it should have happened then also, right? Which regulation to be used? It should have been called out. But great thing is that it has come out now and it is applicable as early as I think October this year, and which is just now 5-6 months away. It is complicated to implement at times because we tend to outsource without knowing what it is. So I think why the RBI is doing right now is because of obviously intense and increased tech adoption and complexity, right? So as of now, from a days where we were outsourced limited stuff, today, I remember when I took over as a CTO, the number of platforms or tech outsourcing stuff we would have done would be limited to few only, right? Maybe few, under 10 at times. But today, the numbers with each bank will be running into maybe 40, 50, 60, because more and more tech adoption is happening. The focus is increasing and complexity. For example, if you outsource something and you do end-to-end, for example, I know that to simplify outsourcing, many banks took an approach that they will go to one partner and they will take care of the rest of the thing. And RBI doesn't like it because the single partner dependency is extremely high. It's actually dangerous, and it has played adversely on many of these partners where if you look at during migration, so for example, you come back and say, I want to migrate out of this platform. We've had cases where the platform guys are not helping in migration. So in one case, when we helped the client in migrating, we know that we were not getting enough support from the current vendor. They were actually pushing all the guys to pay, the clients to pay random money. And even now, I think many other banks are also caught in the same problem with the same platform, right? So we need to be conscious about outsourcing and what are the challenges with it. There's also a lot of entry of new platforms, right? For example, we knew that we are working with, say, 5 or 6 or 10 old players. These 10 old players had a good idea about what regulators thinking on. They were also directly connected to the regulators. And therefore, the understanding was huge. But today, if you look at it, every now and then we'll see a new player coming in each area. And each one of them is running a different platform with different thought process. The RBI is worried that with these new gen platforms, B2B platforms, we might have a different problem coming up. Cloud is obviously a reason why because cloud adoption was not really very high on the banking side. NBFC side was increasing. So RBI is also looking at NBFC also to come up to cloud and support it. So any NBFC, even the credit bureau, anybody in the ecosystem which is regulated by RBI is actually come under the radar, and they need to actually adopt it right away. The banks are also right now outsourcing more and more service lines end to end. So, for example, you look at credit, and with one credit business line you will outsource to a TSP. Now, there's also concept of lending service provider. There is also a TSP provider, right? Technology service provider. So, what does it do if the outsourcing happens to them? Yes or no? We need to figure out. So, a lot of other things in the progress. There is also a resiliency issue, right? Because banks and NBFCs are becoming more and more, I would say, system oriented. So availability of service is critical. We know that a large bank actually had an issue in the resiliency side, right? And therefore, they were actually not allowed to expand their business. So criticality is on resiliency side, that when you outsource, the availability should also be 100% all the time. Otherwise, the common customers will be impacted, right? And of course, customers are always online, right? So you can't have things going off. Yesterday night, I was actually trying to stupidly book an FD in my bank, and it didn't work, right? So resiliency issue, right? It doesn't work from, I think, 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock onwards. What bad service, right? So I think RBI is looking at all of that and saying that now is the time for you guys to build. At this point of time, I think I'm just looking at this. I think there's a question which came. There were already existing regulations. So why are these new ones framed by RBI? Actually, you can say they were existing, but not really. They were embedded into a large document with a lot of words like may. Banks may do it. So there was a clarity of thought was always missing, and then may became you must, and sometimes it was overkill. And also the definition, what is IT outsourcing and what is business outsourcing, that is also not clear. So I think with this one document, you have simplified everything for the market. Similarly, RBI is coming back with a pure outsourcing regulation separately, which is not IT. So it helps in simplifying the job and task of let's say CTO and the CISOs and the compliance officers. What are they? So if you ensure that it's at least 20 pages, you know what it is. Otherwise, you can keep going back to some hundreds of documents. It kills you, right? So what RBI, and even the Gopal Krishnan committee report has been replaced with a straight document, which you can easily comply, do what you need to do. Otherwise, the document was, I think, hundreds of pages with different variations, which was difficult for anybody to gauge on. And again, this is based on our experience, right? I think this is all what we saw and what we heard. With this, I pause now and sort of give it back to Shashank. He's an expert in this business, and at all times, or one time, I think I look at him, and all of our customers look at him for compliance and regulatory support from a tech side. So over to you, Shashank. I'll pause now, and I'll also.
Thanks, Amir. So thanks, and I think you've talked lots of generous word. So hi guys, I'm Shashank. So I've been into this space for quite long. So I started my career with L&T and Wipro, where that primarily I was into the cybersecurity and the technology advisory services, right? Working with mostly the BFSI company within India as well as in the Middle East and all this. So seen very closely at all the challenges comes with an outsourcing, and especially on the security, compliance, business continuity, DR side, and all these things, right? And then I joined BCP. I joined as an IT governance head before moving into the managing the digital and the open banking and all these things. So as the IT governance has very closely working with lots of the outsourcing engagement, right? Be it on the entire infrastructure management, desktop support, from the ATM management services to application development, application support, and lots of things. And could see that and during the RBI audits, we used to have challenges, right? Because pertaining to the service delivery and lots of the risk and compliance. So that's coming with that experience. And as a part of the digital field, also be engaged with the customer on the digital aspects, right? So that's where that also we pick up and guide the customers on the various RBI regulatory requirements. So with this, I'll just continue. So I'll just pick up from where the Samir left, right? Why now? He's given a good perspective. But how is the challenges, right? Before I go into that, talking about some of the nitty-gritties of some of the regulation aspect, but look at that, what it's going to bring on the table, right? Definitely, once it's becoming a very specific regulatory framework for the outsourcing, it may increase in the regulatory scrutiny, right? Now, the auditors also will have a very clearly referenceable document to look into that. And lots of the emphasis on the policy, audits, risk assessment. It means that every aspect will be looked at by auditors, right? Now, for the companies also going to manage that balancing act between the service delivery, with be it on the infra, be it on the application or anything, as well as the looking in the risk side of it. So you need to be very carefully balance it out. There definitely gonna be increased pressure on the regular audits. Like you continue to do the regular audit, continue to perform the risk assessment, look into the business continuity, DR arrangement, not only for your partner but also for your organization, because lots of the emphasis has been put that how the organization you are ready in case if there is challenge on the third party side, right? And always there should be an kind of the option available to move things in house, right? So that's not gonna be easy. So that will be there. You may need to many of the banks and the and others will have to reevaluate your arrangements, and especially some of the strategically critical engagement that you will have to relook. Maybe, sorry, maybe you need to do the due diligence or the risk assessment. So that's will need to do that. I think organization may struggle on the skill set challenges because coming with the guys who can understand the different aspect of the security, the risk part of it, the service delivery, as well as the completely on the business continuity on both the side from the banking as well as the partner delivery side, it's not going to be easy. So organization may face a challenge on the skill set. And then definitely you can't, as a banking entity, as a regulated entity, you can't stop your digital transformation. Digital transformation is on the fast pace. So manage the digital transformation. You'll continue to look at the partner on the way who can continue to help you to drive your digital agenda. So you will have to manage the efforts between continue your digital transformation as well as continue to manage the risk with which may come with the third party. So that's going to be the challenge. Now let us look at the quick impact of. So one of the questions that like why the regulation, new regulation coming into. So one thing I think very clearly that especially on this outsourcing guidelines, if you look at it, earlier ones it was very focused on the scheduled commercial bank, but now it has been extended to the NBFCs, the urban cooperative bank, the credit information companies. And since earlier the small finance bank and payment bank were not there, so those also have been brought under the umbrella. So everybody is in there. Now everybody will have definitely and a kind of the impact because of the regulations. And this definitely for the positive, right? So banks primarily, they will need to do a proper deeper focus and the scrutiny of all the outsourcing engagement. So many of the bank will go back and there are some different guidelines has been given which is coming for the renewal. So how do you need to look at the engagements which are coming for the renewal? If you are getting into the new closing of the some of this new contract, then you have to relook at it. And those anyway existing and gonna renew it after the towards, then you'll have to look at that due diligence and every aspects again. So you'll have to again relook at the focus. Bank may have to further strengthen the entire framework aligned with all the regulatory aspects, right? So bank already been running. So since Gopal Krishnan committee was there, so bank has been definitely had some frameworks with respect to outsourcing the risk management. But now there will be a much deeper emphasis on that things. Many of the banks have started looking in the cloud, but they may have now different perspective to look at the cloud because lots of the guidelines are there where that they may have to depend heavily on the cloud service provider. So how you're going to look at that, how the cloud service provider is going to help you to meet the compliance obligation, that's also going to be very critical. And also as one of the why now we are talking about that emergence of the new player who are helping into the various kind of the be it on DSPs, be it on the new ATM service switch provider, be it on the any new core banking or the loan service provider. So you will have to look at that how you're going to handle these new players. Well, a small finance bank and the payments bank definitely they rely heavily on the technology management for the partners. So they will have to explore that. Are they going to continue with the core activities or they need to move the core activities in-house? So there will be lots of the discussions going to be there and they may have to relook at some of the aspects. And they need to definitely build some way, there will be some framework, but they need to build a full governance framework to manage and monitor, right? So entire outsourcing engagement. And the same goes with the NBFCs, CICs, the UCBs, because they are also continuing to putting more emphasis on the technology investment and as well as more on the outsourcing partnership. And they've been always been very open on the cloud direction. So they will have to relook that entire whole thing and continue to build a full governance framework to manage and monitor. Well, these are the regulated entity, but I think there will be a good impact on the service provider, right? Be whatever that service segment that you are operating into that. So you need to align your service delivery to meet your compliance obligations so that you are able to meet the customers that these regulated entity requirement. And there will be a deep focus on the plugging that entire the data security, privacy, business continuity, audit, and the risk management into your service delivery framework. So everybody is going to impact it. This is like primarily our perspective that we wanted to bring on the table. And that's where we have been working and just quickly like that what we bring. So we do the gap assessment with respect to all the guidelines. And this also is especially helping to building the policy, be it on the outsourcing policy, the risk management policies, the business continuity policies, and the governance subject. I'll come back. So governance and risk management framework, helping them to perform the third-party security audits, right? Helping into the RBI audit preparedness. Okay, so I spent lots of those sleepless nights going through the RBI audit whenever the audit used to happen, right? And also helping to continue monitoring and management. So primarily do an as is a study, do a deep compliance review, and helping do the regular monitoring. So with this, I'll continue on the regulations. I'll just give you a quick insight into the what are the critical aspects being covered. But before that, I'll take a pause and there is a questions. Okay, so
I will ask him to allow him to talk.
Okay.
Yeah, he asked him to talk.
Yeah, Jay, please go ahead with your question.
Shashank, I didn't want to stop your flow, but then from the previous couple of slides back, it kind of felt that the tech partners of all the banks and small finance banks and NBFCs are going to be challenged, because the notion seems to be that the key functions or anything that is of any material has to go back into the core and back to the bank. Is that what I understood right from the notification? Yeah.
Yes. So look at that. So there I made a very specific pointers, right? So service providers also will have an impact, right? Maybe the existing one, the new ones, those who are working with the banks, like they will have to realign your entire the service delivery so that all the regulatory requirement, because anyway it will come back to them, right, from the banks. Some of these things already majority of them may be doing that, right? But they will have to relook that how they continue to help the customer to meet their complete obligations. And
Okay.
also how you demonstrate, right, in your entire service delivery, that how you're going to take care of the data security, privacy, every aspect has to be demonstrated. So that's also, so definitely there will be an impact on the partners, sir.
And on to the left-hand side, just before you go on, if you could stretch one more minute on the point you mentioned about structurally, they would have to explore part of core activity moving in-house. That's from the business functions that they had outsourced. That also will have to come back. Is that the meaning of it?
So maybe that's why as I think may explore, right? Because the more the core activities is outsourced, the more deeper is scrutiny, right? More deeper expectation from it. So there could be a possibility that banks may relook at it, right? It will depend. See, so one of the aspects is that they will do the due diligence, right? And how the due diligence brings into the different risk dimensions, then accordingly it will call will be taken. But this is like primarily our anticipation, our understanding that it may have a kind of the impact where the customer will relook at it.
Yeah. Thank you, Shashank.
Thanks. So I'll just continue. Look at divided into 10 broad chapters. One is the preliminary definitions, regulated entity, their role, and the governance framework. So I'll talk about all these into subsequently the key highlights of each one of the evaluation and engagement of the service provider outsourcing agreement. Like it's always very critical. How you're going to manage your entire the risk with respect to outsourcing, the monitoring and control of outsource activities. Some definition on the outsourcing within the group and the conglomerate, as well as the cross-border outsourcing, because there are many other international players also who are providing the different kind of the services. So how do you going to handling the cross-border outsourcing and the exit strategy? So just look at that. So as I was talking about that initial one, which was there primarily focused on the scheduled commercial bank, but here very clearly called out that it applies to all this entity, right? Small finance bank, payments bank, local area bank, credit information, urban cooperative banks, right? And foreign banks who have the substantial business and the IT management in country. Also, just broader perspective, one of the important things that this regulations bring the clarity about, the clearly defining that what are the applicable activities and what are the non-applicable activities. So applicable activities, most of you might be seeing infrastructure to network management, application, testing services, right? ATM switch application service provider, data center operation, cloud computing, very clearly. First time that at least I've seen any specific guidelines coming very clearly that what you can do, what you can't do in the cloud. Payment service infrastructure management. So this is all the infrastructure management. But what that doesn't include, like any kind of the procurement. If there is a bank you are or any NBFC, you are availing any core banking, internet banking services, they may not be included. Like all kind of the audit services, SMS not included. This is very important, like any kind of the BC engagement or the fintech partnership or partnership with the data enabler, this will be fall under the financial outsourcing of the services. So that's where that specific, there is a regulations, little old one, could be possible that RBI may come into a fresh regulation, not sure. But so far, at least that guidelines of the financial outsourcing of the services will apply into that. Regulatory bodies, which is there, provide like CCIL and all these things, also not covered under these activities. Just quick on the definition, they try to define the groups that any of the group companies providing the services to group companies, regulated entity, REs, group companies providing to the subsidiaries, group companies which are also the REs, like typically you will look at that ICICI Bank or wherever that they're providing the support services to the group companies, right? Material outsourcing, there's always been critical that you need to look at materiality of any engagement, that what kind of the impact it may have on the business side, right? Not only looking at from the technology management, but also the end result on the business delivery, right? So material impact as well as on the customers, like if service is down, like for example, ATM, if the ATM service is down, customer may not be able to withdraw the money or, okay. So this like you need to look at that, what kind of impact it will have on the customers. So, and any kind of the data theft and all these things has to be also looked at the materiality. And also they have defined a service provider, all of the service provider who are providing the IT source of the services, right? Just pick up some of the names. Now look at what is the role of each of the entity, right? One is that definitely it's trying to bring clearly that what is the regulatory and supervisory requirement, ensure that senior management has to be very clearly responsible for outsourced activities, maintain the high standard, and very clearly calling at that what are the activities that it includes. Look at that. Very clearly, like service delivery that you need to look at that, support you need to look at that, entire the security and the compliance also has to be monitored. Customer satisfactions, both for the internal customers as well as external customer satisfaction, you need to look into that. And very clearly bringing the auditor supervisions, including the RBI supervision, because guidelines very clearly talking about that REs will have the responsibility to do the audit and the review of the service provider, as well as allow the RBI to do an audit, right? Or the supervision, I will not call the word audit, but maybe the supervision, right? So it's very clearly calling out requirement, also bringing that segregation of interest and conflict of duties between the different stakeholders, right? Comprehensive assessment, so emphasis on the deep assessment, evaluation, due diligence has to be done, whether you are doing for the first time, the renewal or the existing that you need to look at it. There has to be proper grievance addressation mechanism and inventory management, right? You need to have the kind of that governance level that, okay, what other outsourcing arrangement has been done, risk and classification that you need to do and all these things. So you need to maintain a proper inventory of all the services that have been outsourced within that organizations. What are the very important, the governance framework is emphasized on, where the governance framework also looks at what kind of the roles and responsibilities. So definitely it has to be completely driven through the board approved IT outsourcing policy. It was there earlier, most of the bank had, but many of the NBFCs, the CICs or others may have, may not have, they may need to bring into the outsourcing policy now, right? Delegation of authority, entire the termination process, exit strategy, everything has to be defined in the policy. So policy is going to be the governing structure for the entire risk management, audit, agreement, contractual requirement, all. So what is going to happen? Like, so most of the banks who already have that governance structure, now they may have to rebuild the term of reference for entire the senior management, that IT strategy committee, you look at it, or the board, you look at it, like IT strategy committee will have, it will become a regular agenda items that where that you continue to provide that reports and also need to put an end-to-end framework from the acquisition to monitoring to exit. So that's where that lots of the work will go.
So one question, let's say, from my perspective to you would be, so you have been on governance side all the time. How would you sort of manage this situation where, let's say, if you are a compliance head and this regulation is not, how would you go about your audience is on?
Yeah, mine is on.
Yeah. So how would you manage this structure at all, right? Because there are so many changes happening. IT also the policy is there, and you are a compliance head, right? Or a chief compliance officer, all of these. How would you go about doing it?
So definitely, I think a starting point would be that look at that what I have, right? And what I have in the both terms, what are the services have been outsourced, right? So I'll look at that current stack. So what are the services? Because I may have the multiple, right? So I try to get in a one single view at this stage, then what are the services, and then look at the compliance structure that what I have, right? And then kind of do a quick kind of gap assessment with respect to that with respect to new policy expectation, what are the things I have or I don't have, right? And how does it applies to all the things, services that I have outsourced? So let's say, for example, one of the things policy may not have the due diligence because due diligence was not enough much emphasis, but it's there. Now I look at that, okay, all the services which are there, for how many I have not done the due diligence? What is there any kind of the regulatory evidence are there? Okay, so when I talk about the increase in the scrutiny, one of the clear things comes when you're talking about the regulation is that you're able to demonstrate through the evidence, right? That's where that some of the challenges come, because RBI or your internal audit or external audit look at for the evidence. Like when you talk about due diligence, is there any kind of the report or the things are there which has been presented to management? So I'll try to look at the gap assessment and then go into that deeper to doing the performing the risk assessment management from all of the things and recalibrate that entire the service engagement, the control structure, and then go into the implementation. But the starting point will be to look at the service stack, look at my current policy stack. And if I don't have, then definitely I need to look into that some partner who can help us to build that entire the framework structure. But from the bank's perspective, I will definitely have. I'll do a quick gap assessment and then take it from there.
So from a stakeholder perspective, the primary stakeholder would be, let's say, a compliance head. There'll be a tech head, IT head, or the CISO, and with support structure coming from, say, the business heads, because they will also be the person using it, right? How do you think the structure will be built internally to support this kind of change? And given that there's 6 months down the line, it will be sort of audited or reviewed by RBI, do you think it's sufficient time for them to do, or they need a decision of making it happen, or they need to start now? So how much time will it take from here to do that, and what kind of support they can take internally, externally?
So, at first point, when you're talking about the stakeholder, I think one of the critical stakeholders is to start with the CTO and the IT steering committee, right? The CTO or the CIOs that need to start working very closely. If I'm handling the governance structure or the governance, so probably start working with the CTO and then bringing that all the business head, like for example, ATM service management. So definitely the digital banking head will come into the picture, right? So you need to bring in the stakeholders. So these stakeholders are very critical that you start aligning with. And now that it comes to the time frame, I think time frame, it will depend on that your initial gap assessment, and which has to be called out in a very short time. Now, some of this readiness can be performed. So you know that's what are the critical material services you need to do in a quick look at it, that what are my material service impact, like for example, ATM management, my data center operation. You may try to focus on some of these critical ones at the start, because you may not be able to do everything in one go. So you'll start focusing on the couple of these guys, and then try to do the due diligence, perform the risk assessment, and very critically, the time-consuming activity will be there, that performing the third-party audit for these guys, like going to their premises, performing those audits, and bringing the reports, and also making sure that those gaps which has been observed during the audits, which has been closed. Documentation and all these things may not take more than a 2 months kind of thing effort, but also how do you gonna make sure that the implementation point and the control implementations gets done, but priority wise, you will start looking at that where the material impacts are much higher, because that's working very closely with the business and the risk guys and the CTO. You're able to figure it out that whatever the material impacts are there.
And what if I'm a software provider? Let's say I run my business on top, so I may be having my own switch on which outsourcing has happened and all that. And I'll be sort of pushed by all the partners to do it, right? So instead of they pushing, what can I do to get ready for all these processes? Because otherwise I'll be down with 6-7 concurrent audits and questions coming up. So how do I get ready for as an IT service provider, say on switching side?
So one of the very interesting point, this guidelines is also providing both from the regulated entities as well as the service provider side, that if any service provider, there are multiple regulated entities are availing the services, may do a joint kind of saying, yeah, this is there. So joint kind of audit can be performed, provided that each of the regulated entities, the risk aspects has been, and the service delivery aspect has been covered as a part of. So that's primarily, and where that I think switch for any of the service provider may collaborate and may try to bring it out some of the regulated entities at one front and say that, okay, you may do a kind of the joint audit. So that's what primarily try to help them ease out some of the pressure. Otherwise, then definitely he has to put in a kind of the evidence structure in such a way that, because most of the audit will happen, which will rely on the evidence structure, may not have the deep go and a system level of audit where that service provider has to provide a deeper time, right? So what he can bring it, like, for example, readily available the business continuity document, readily available the DR plan, the DR drills document kind of thing, readily available any third party security audit report. So primarily he has to go and quickly see that all this evidence has been put in place, which can be immediately shown. And in case additional scrutiny is required from the regulated entity, it may not have too much of a variance of the times from the service provider. But yes, if you don't have anything, then trying to demonstrate and explain and all this thing will take a huge amount of time for each of them. So two things. One is that you can see that all the regulated entities can participate together into one single audit. As well as second time, you make sure that all the documentary evidence has been put in place across all this requirement.
So a lot of digital heads of the organizations are also there in this group, right? They have also joined. Now, how should they onboard this, right? Because they will be also involved in this outsourcing, and digital officers obviously primary job is to use these outsourcing either on the business side or tech side. So how should they understand this framework? Because otherwise they'll be lost in this chain, and their platform should actually slow down.
Yeah, like, for example, many of the organizations now they may have their own development team. I'm talking from the digital. They will have, like, for example, digital banking platform or the omni-channel platform, which is there, which is completely being managed by the third party, be it on the terms of the development, be it on the maintenance or the monitoring, right? That's become very critical. And in terms of the customer impact, this is going to highly impact because ultimately the mobile banking, internet banking will rely upon it. So there, that they would require to work very closely with the CTO as well as with your compliance head to figure it out that where are what are the things that they need to look at from the compliance perspective, figure it out. And also, I think I'll talk about some of those aspects where they looks at the business continuity. Like, say, for example, if that partners have a challenge, what alternate options that they will have? Some of this aspect that they will have to relook at it. So lots of the aspects when I go through the subsequent slides, you will realize that lots of the action has to be taken care by, be it on the technology team side or as well as the business side of it. But business, I would suggest that they will have to start having an interaction with the technology team and understand that where are the dependencies are there, what are the aspects that get covered under this regulatory guidelines.
Sure. So I think many of you are asking questions that can you have access to this deck? My request is I think my team will share the feedback form right away. And on this feedback form, please respond. And all those who will share the feedback, we'll share across this deck as well to them, right? So I think it will help us in ensure that we know that you understand where we are coming. And of course, we would love to interact with you if you need any support. Many of you have come back and one-on-one saying that we have a need and can you help us out? That's obviously part and parcel of our job. I think Sridhar, you can continue with your deck and help all if I find questions which you need to respond back.
Yeah, there are a couple of, so I'll come back.
Yeah, we can come back to it.
So in the governance framework, I think I'll just talk about at the high level. So it's very categorically calling it out that what are the board level responsibilities, the senior management, which can be governed through the IT steering committee and the IT functions. At least one thing is very clear in this framework, the guidelines which has come, that calling out CIO responsibilities, right? And be in charge of the IT function, be it as the CIO or the CTO that you will look at it, right? Very clearly calling out that they need to have the complete effective oversight, maintain the create essential capacity within that organization. Like in case if they need to bring in some of the core activities, they have that sufficient capacities to take care of that, right? So it should not that be, okay, they suffer and they can't provide the business continuity for the business delivery, right? And also continue to do the review and audit along with the compliance and the governance team. So bringing out very clearly the CIO responsibility, while the senior management responsibility lies like formulating the policies, risk assessment, and to any of the partner, be it on the switch, software development, anything like look at that. While they also need to look at all the risk, like every dimension, be it on the security risk, data theft, cost, strategically, regulatory and operation risk. While these are primarily the governing bodies from the policy level, but board has to have the complete oversight from the outsourcing policy approval, looking into all the different risk elements across that. Yeah, risk element from the participants. So the governance frameworks from the different team structure very well clearly defined. Well, now, as I was talking about, the evaluation and engagement have been very much emphasized, right? So you need to look at the service provider that when you're considering or renewing, you need to assess the capability, whether they will be able to comply with these regulations, right? Have a risk-based approach to due diligence, right? So this is very critical, that look at all the dimension of the risk, from the security, business continuity, going concern kind of things, all the financial risk, and then try to do another kind of the evaluations, right? Not only the evaluation in terms of the functionality, that what are the service that they will bring into the table, right? Or the cost element and all this thing, but go multidimensional. So multi-dimensional, like qualitative, quantitative, financial, operation, every aspects, right? And some of the aspects that need to be covered, that whether they can classify the data, like if it's in a kind of the cloud based or some kind of the arrangement is there, can you classify what kind of the quality of due diligence of employees, subcontractors they will have, how they are performing, because ultimately any act from their employees, their subcontractor, is liable to put an impact on your side of the business, right? And very categorically, you need to enforce that data storage, data protection, because data storage, earlier regulation very clearly called out that any kind of outsourcing, you need to look at the data localizations, right? And then continue to very strong outsourcing agreement. I don't know, those are the standard aspects which has been defined, that what are the things that you need to include or what you don't need to include, right? And it has been there, right? But only the enforcement has always been a challenge. Like somebody have right to conduct audit. We have seen that many of the outsourcing contracts had the right of conduct audit, but how many audit get conducted? But now, primarily, I will start looking at that each of the outsourcing engagement, they will ask for the audit report from your side, right? And not only the audit report, but also what are the audit points have been raised and those points have been closed, and has there been evidence collected for the closure of those audit points? So I think lots of the emphasis is going to be the supervision and the audits part of it. What are the important factors that you need to look at? That you may have to start looking at the every engagement very differently. Like you can't have the standard agreement template. You need to make sure that all the standard clauses have been included, but you need to look at that every engagement very differently. In fact, the auditing approach will be different. Your risk management approach will be different. Like, for example, if it's only desktop support kind of the services, may not have the much of the materiality impact, right? But what about the data center operation, which has a high materiality impact? Or say, for example, in the digital banking platform management kind of the service, high materiality, right? So you need to look at that each of the engagement very differently. As I said, that engagement risk could vary, so tightening of the controls and bring it to the product and business owner also into that entire management of the outsourcing contract, right? Many times it may happen that business teams, once the contract has been done, you will become liable to the business, definitely. But you need to make sure that business teams is also completely aligned to look at the risk, challenges, exist, business continuity, all the dimensions. I think the risk management has always been a part of the third-party risk management across all the frameworks which RBI has been there, or be it on the ISO 27000, many of the practices which has been followed by the banks, but it's trying to bring it more from the outsourcing perspective. So you need to put up a proper risk assessment framework where that regularly, and it's not a one time, that first time that we know onboarding that you are doing the risk assessment, but regularly how you can do that and see that how your risk is improving, decreasing, what are the residual risks are there, what are the risk mitigation plans are there. You need to continue to demonstrate that, okay, those risks have been continually closed, right? So closing, monitoring very closely. What are the key things that also from the guidelines is saying that you need to put that all the safeguards where the outsourcing agents are providing the services to the multiple REs, right? Any cyber incident happen from the cyber security perspective, it has to be reported to the REs, and because RE has to report it to the regulators, right? So those are some of the aspects very clearly called out. And security and confidentiality of the customer information, you need to be very cognizant of it. And also try to see that are there any concentration risks? Like, are you providing lots of the services to one single partner? So that's your perspective. You need to look into that approach. I think this is from our side what we are suggesting, that focus on all the dimensions of the risk. Look at the financial risk, what it can be in case if the service delivery has an impact. Service delivery and continuity from what are the functionality has been outsourced, what kind of the service delivery is there. So all these aspects from the risk that has to be looked at. And very important, the reputation. Many times, like you are outsourced, but and the certain of the services where there has a higher materiality impact and the customer service impact, definitely you need to look at the reputation side of it and the security and data privacy risk. Try to align the framework with enterprise risk management framework because it makes it easy to sustain that outsourcing risk management framework. and layered it on top of the IT risk and the third-party risk management, which is anyway within the organization. So try to build on top of it. It will help us to operationalize that entire risk management framework. I think the business continuity plan and the DR plan is very critical from the, and again, it may depend on the materiality of outsourcing. It will depend on the what kind of the service that you have looked at it. Is it at the on-site level of the services? It is on the off-site level kind of the services are there. Which function that services are there? You need to look at all the aspects and then accordingly define the business continuity and DR plan with your outsourcing partner. And not only that, you need to go back and you relook at your entire business continuity disaster recovery plan, because it has to be completely linked with the third-party delivery. Let's say a data center of hosting services that you have outsourced. Now in case of your technology service provider, where that you talk about your core banking, say RTO is 4 hours, right? And what happened if the data center hosting services have an impact and their business continuity is not supporting about like 2 hours of the RTO? What is going to challenge for you? So you need to embed that your business continuity DR plan with the third party. So now you need to go back and ask the BCP and DR from your partners, right? And again, it will depend on the materiality. It will depend on the service that you are consuming. It depends on that on-site, off-site, all the sort of the arrangement. It's only the manpower-based services. It's a tech-based services. Every aspect that has to be looked at it, right? So that's where that I think business continuity. And also very clearly calling out that you be ready with the options to look at the alternate players into that space, as well as bringing that in-house in case if something goes terribly wrong, right? So you need to have the sufficient capacity building within that. And it has to be part of your business continuity plan. Like, for example, if the service provider is not able to deliver the services as per the expected SLAs and all this thing, how you are going to handle that? Because RBI will lots of the questions around that. Because ultimately it's impact your actual customers, right? For the banks. Just continuing, I think monitoring of the control is a regular do the continue the review, doing that audits part of the having a regular. So very clearly calling that you need to have an unrestricted access to the data. Again, it will all depend on that what kind of the materiality, like some or the arrangement that you have, like suppose the on-site based employee manpower based services may not have, right, because there's no data exchange. But wherever there is a data exchange, data maintenance is where the service provider, you need to look at it, that continue to look at the financial and operational condition, because it's lead to directly going concern, right, of that entity. So you need, because if they have any challenge of the sustaining the business, and it has happened in the past also, we have experienced many a time that some of the customers were not able to pay back to their salaries to their employees, and they're having a continued attrition. You need to regularly look at those conditions, right? Doing the regular audit, including the subcontractors, but audit frequency will depend that again on the different aspects, risk, service, and all these things. From the monitoring perspective, again from our suggestions that define that KPIs, right, for what are the monitoring that you are going to do, and it has to link to the service delivery, service requirement. Put up a steering committee structure that's which as a, make it as a part of the IT steering, but you need to have the proper steering committee for each of the programs that you're running for the outsourcing, especially if where that materiality impact is very high. So have a regular steering committee reviews, not only at the program manager level of the review or the relationship manager level of the review. Focus on the collaborative approach. I think partners will also be very forthcoming to help you out, because their interest lies in success of yours. So try to bring up a collaborative approach rather than having a conflicting approach. So you need to, many times you need to help them to put up a proper evidence structure so that you can satisfy to the regulatory requirements, right? And engage with the third party wherever that you want to put up in a kind of the end-to-end management. So that's also you can look at it. I'll just look through some of the things which has happened that groups, if in case any company within the group is providing, so some of the guidelines has been specified to group companies, may not applicable to the larger segments of the customers, but yes, to few it may have an impact. So there primarily it says that you need to maintain an arm's length relationship in dealing all those dealings, because those are the business dealings, right? So that's you need to maintain and control. I think cross-border outsourcing, that's also some of these aspects have been very clearly called out. And I'm just putting some example, like service provider from the sanctioned countries, you need to very clearly about it. Like in case if there are challenges, I'm taking the name, but it's not there in RBI. We are just putting in our interpretation, right? If there is a challenge of the going concern for any international customer, maybe winding up the business in the country. So you need to look at those aspects very clearly. Continue to monitor the government policies around that areas. It's going to be very critical if you have outsourced. That's again the questions. You creating the inventory, look at each of the engagement very closely. Bring out your contingency and existing strategy in line with the business continuity, your business continuity plan, and you need to have make sure that our regulated entity and RBI have a direct or conduct audit to these service providers. So some of these aspects were not there in the earlier guidelines, which has been very clearly called out in this current one because of we know that change in this environment structure, right? And the last, just having a complete exit strategy, one of the very critical in terms of, and we have seen since working very closely in this consulting space with some of these customers, we have seen the challenges of the exits, like, say, for example, not support of the data handover, not support in the terms of the transitioning the service. This becomes very painful, right? So when you're building the contract, when you're building the relationship, you make sure that exit strategy has been kept in the mind, right? And these are some of the challenges related to data migration, support during the data migration, handing over the data completely, service transitions, like, for example, application to application, the service management, how it will happen. So exit study. So these are some of those very critical. It's very difficult to cover in the 30-40 minutes that all these guidelines, but these are just to bring you some aspects to you to focus on. I think we already spoken about the impact. Okay, and so impact going to be across banks, SB, small finance bank, NBFCs, urban cooperative banks. And this is again, we work with, okay, very closely. We work with banks and NBFCs where we can help to assess their current outsourcing engagement for the compliance perspective, whether you are already having or you want to go through. We can look at the existing policy. If not there, we can build into the policies, perform the entire risk management, help into the building the BCP DR frameworks, as well as look at your exit strategy and help you into the any kind of the readiness. And more importantly, which is again very critical, like help you to perform the due diligence, whether for the new or the renewals that you want to do that. Do a deep dive of the compliance review with respect to controls, and as well as not only that, it's like, but we can work as a partner on the throughout that working and defining the KPIs, putting the governance framework, perform the regular assessment, regular audits, and that's all. So with this, I think I'll come to the end. And Samir, I think we may have some other questions.
Yeah. So. There was a every board member has to get engaged in this process. So if I was a board member or I was like a CXO, let's say chief business officer or CFO in the organization, how should I address it? Because we looked at it from a tech perspective, we looked at it from multiple perspectives, but CFOs or CEOs or board members, how should they react to the whole thing? CEO, right?
Yeah, I think very gonna be critical, right? One of the things that I anticipate, like, for example, in the earlier bank, the CEO or the CFO or the board will try to bring out on a very short snippet that, okay, where do I exist in terms of my current state, in terms of what are the services they've been on, because many of them the board may not have an idea, right? So they would like to look at the current state, that who are the partners, what are the services that have been outsourced, what are the risks that can be there, and especially more from you look at that going concern perspective, right? And while the data security and everything will be important, but more from the going concern perspective, are there going to be any violation to the government policies and all these things? Those are the very critical aspects that board and or the CEO will try to look at it. So just I think very quickly, I think immediate will be there that board will try to look at that continuous snapshot, like whether the contract is there, kind of the tick marks, right, across all the dimension, and where the gaps. I think board always look at that. Okay, show me the gaps, and then show me the plan that how you're going to do about it.
The challenge I see is that from a CTO perspective or digital perspective, they're already now having so many other regulations to do. There is a NSP structure, which is both service provider, that has to be enabled. There is also a generic master guidance which have come from a tech perspective and governance perspective already out there. And then this So I think and each of the CTOs are moving on. So how do they get ready for it on at a personal level, right? Because today they will be good news is that CTOs are also into transformation activities.
Yeah,
So how do they get ready for this change?
And I think some of the things will be like continued engagement with an ecosystem to understand that how the different participants are responding to those things, right? And the continued awareness, learning the implications, and that's where primarily we come into the place where that we work very closely with the ecosystem, try to help them to understand that what are the implications, what are the challenges, and giving it a quick view, right? That's why most of the I think banks have a kind of the reference to check with each other also to take an insight. But I think CTO, as a CTO, definitely they would like to go a little deeper into that, where that they need to deep dive. Now that only I was talking about the challenges ahead. The CTO is going to have, or the CTO is going to have one of the tough tasks to continue to maintain that compliance requirement, as well as the continue to drive that digital transformation, right? Because auditors, I think auditors' presence will continue to increase within the banks or the NBFCs, right? So I think it has to be making a balancing act. I don't know I have rightly answered or not, but I think there has to be that they need to get deep dive into that whole.
The challenge is, let's say in October, we are saying we need to comply. What should be the roadmap for that? And the second part is, let's say we have a compliance, non-compliance issue, right? I'm sure if we start auditing all of these around all these parameters, I'm sure we'll find challenges. So in 6 months, what do you think mid-size or large, maybe let's say large bank or a large NBFC can achieve? And wherever do you think that they have to go forward with it? And because there'll be a lot of sort of NRs or issues which exist today from a regulatory perspective. So because you will find that some partners are not going to support it or not in a position to support. So there's also a sequential impact of replacing those outsourcing agreements as well. So I think I do see it as not I guess a 6-month activity. I do see it as having a progression which will run for maybe 18 to 24 months. I think I'm really worried from that perspective.
So I think in the timelines, now it says that October 1, 2023 it will be applicable, but they have provided some kind of the leeway to many of the guys. Like, say, for example, any contracts are coming for the renewal, say, for example, by October. You may not do that by the October, but they provide a 12 months kind of the leeway from that. So it means that April it has come. By next April, so October you go for the next April that you will be able to bring those controls into place. So there are different flexibility in the timelines has been provided. But I think more importantly, by October 23 is one of the things that can be done, and it is easy to do. Go ahead and put a policy framework, put up a risk management framework, put up on a kind of an entire the governance structure within that organization, and at least get ready with your material impact outsourcing partners. And I think it should not be challenged that where that you can go and do a performance audit per se, right? Yes, which are coming for the renewal or which has not been signed, they have given some kind of the timelines to adhere to the compliance with respect to, not very mandatory that you need to, because anyway renewal, so you may not do that audits or the relook at the contracts. You can't do that lots of the things. So there you provided some kind of by next April that you should be ready with that.
Yeah, and other way around is that any outsourcing you do now is actually.
So yes, any new outsourcing that you are gonna put that, you need to put it in the framework.
I think there's a question coming from Shivani. Shivani, I'm just making you ready to speak. You please go ahead, please. Please unmute yourself and go ahead with your question. And if there is any other question any one of you have here, we are happy to respond back.
Sure. Thanks, Amir, for giving me this opportunity. So I just wanted to ask a question that, I think, and this is typically not only for NBFC, but payment service providers, wherein there is an existing outsourcing framework already in place, which talks about core management and non-core management functions. So what is your views in that? Can the IT infrastructure or can the IT related activities be outsourced within the group?
Within the group?
Yeah, I mean, let's say a company is somewhere where one group company is based abroad, and that's a holding company and it has its subsidiary company in India. So, and the IT services are generally which are commonly shared, right? And those fall under the core management of the outsourcing framework.
Yes.
So can it be a shared service? And if group is performing on that behalf, can group actually do that?
So yes, if you look at it, the two aspects I spoke about, like there, and especially both is applicable in the case that you're talking about. One is that group can provide the technology services, very clearly calling it out. Only thing, ensuring that all the conflict of interest and everything has been very well taken care of it, right? So like say, non-data sharing, security, business continuity, all the aspects have been taken care. And second, since you're talking about this case where that the group entity is outside, right? So that will fall into the cross-border outsourcing. So you need to look at the both the aspects of the group list of based kind of the what are the controls that you need to take care of it, as well as the what are the cross-border related kind of the requirement is there. You need to look at it. But in the both scenario, it can be done. Only thing you need to take care of the both this chapter.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, in fact, if there are more questions, you will let us know. Happy to take more questions if required. We will pause for a minute, maybe while these guys will ask. But from so I understand that this is a task to be done and planning for it. From a long-term perspective, what are the other things? Given that given that there's also a master document and there's also an RFP. Should we be creating a common framework saying that this is a basic minimum program we should have for any kind of tech related stuff? And then you have, because LSP also has a similar structure, master document also has some ingredients around it. So how do you harness the CTO of all of them structured together, right? It's too much.
So I think so one, the master document which is going to be relevant for the banks and NBCs that has been extended, which is kind of a revised version of the Gopalakrishnan committee which came in the last year, right? It's talking about all the aspect, governance, IT. You need to embed that this entire the outsourcing engagement also as a part of this. Let's say, for example, there is a provision for IT risk management. You can build it that entire IT risk management, that one layer of the outsourcing risk management, right? You don't need to look at it separated as a CTO. Like when you're looking at the dashboard, you don't want to see that, okay, show me the IT risk separately and show me the outsourcing of the IT services risk separately. You need to have the one single view. Look at that, say, for example, business continuity plan or the DR. So you will look at that always the DR drill of the CTO that, okay, my core banking DR drill, show me the, what is the status, or say, for example, my digital platform. But at the same time, also look at that, okay, ITM service provider, which is my outsource. What is the DRS readiness status for my ITM service? So I think this entire structure can be put into the single umbrella across all the threads, even like, for example, role structure I was talking. You may not need to do a separate IT steering committee for both, but where the IT steering committee is there, you try to embed the entire agenda of the outsourcing also into the whole of the process. So it's helped us manage that time optimization as well as the ensuring that compliance is much better.
I think this is great. I think we have just run out of time. I think we'll pause now. Just a quick point from our side. I think, Siddharth, I also learned a lot in your session, because I think this is an area where always you are always building, so I never had to focus on it. So thank you for that. I think many of you have, so we've almost got, I think, 35 people who have been sort of even asked for a meeting or feedback. But if there's anybody else who's looking for this document, please go ahead and share your feedback. We will be happy to respond back. If you need a meeting with us or decision with us, because many of our clients are working with us right now for implementation, and I do know that many of them are facing a lot of challenges in implementing it. So happy to work with you. And generally, from a regulatory perspective, I think we do believe that the balancing act has to be done between the business and then the tech side and the compliance side, all three of them together. So I think this is the angle which we want to bring it together. So if you want to look at that, please just reach out to us. With this, we pause now. Thank you, guys. And
thank you, guys. Yeah.
And we'll be back again very soon with another session on regulatory side. In fact, we work a lot on regulatory and embedded finance and fintech side and digital finance side. So we'll come back with more and more sessions. Thank you. Thank you.